On this mileage unknown, we're going to take a look at my brother's 73 Volkswagen thing. And we must be gluttons for punishment because we're going to drop the engine out of this. We're going to put the engine, that little 1600 single port from my Pop's 56 into it. That was actually the engine out of Bugley, my 69. And we'll talk about why we're doing the engine swap as I walk around, but we're going to take a quick look at the 73, and then Trav and I are about to get dirty and see how much shenanigans we can get into. If you're not familiar with the Volkswagen thing, it was produced for quite a while outside of the US, but it was only brought into the US for 73 and 74. This one actually is a 73, which in my opinion and Trav's opinion is the better looking one. The 74s have the big air boxes right here. So the 73 just looks a little cleaner. Some of them did have hard tops. This one should have a soft top, but we just have the mechanism there. No top yet material. The doors actually pull off really simple. And things in the last couple years have really jumped up in value. It's getting harder and harder to find a nice, clean, rust-free thing. This one actually sat for probably 20 plus years, so it's another barn find that we picked up. Trav actually bought this before I bought my fastback and before we started working on the 55, so we kind of jumped ahead of him, and he's been waiting to get this one on the road and driving a little bit better. It does run. We got it running after it sat for so long, cleaned the tank, did a tune-up, did carbs, but it's never run quite right. After some research, this one actually is a 1300 dual port, and it just feels really tired. So that's why we're going to throw that 1600 single port that came out of Pop's 56 into it, because I know that engine's really fairly fresh, not a ton of miles on it, and it wasn't that long ago that it got resealed. This one is leaking fairly badly out of the oil cooler, which, I mean, there's not enough room to really get anything out. So the only way we were going to do that anyway was to drop the engine. Instead, we decide we're going to swap that other one in, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with this. At some point, Trav's going to get all the engine tin powder coated, get this really cleaned up, but want to drive it. I mean, it's very interesting driving this car or driving my fastback versus driving a Bug. It's a whole different experience. And this one really is a cool, clean example. It's got dents and dings and whatever, but it makes it much more drivable. Now, my brother drives the crap out of his 55, but you're a little bit more worried about going down the road in a car that nice versus one that you could just hop in, drive to work, have some fun, and get lots of thumbs up. The looks you get driving a thing down the road is a whole different experience. But we are gonna get the car in the garage, get it up on stands, and see how far we can get. Engine's coming out. We've never taken one out of a thing. I can't imagine it's a whole lot different than the Bugs. I know we're gonna have to swap. That 1600 had a generator on it, so we're gonna swap the alternator over to the 1600, but that's probably about it. We are gonna get busy. Time to get dirty. We have the first engine out, and honestly, that was almost too easy, knock on something, but it is amazing how much easier it is to pull and swap engines on a car that's stock and not cut, and everything fits nicely. In comparison to the Bugs, the swapping around we did in the Bugs in the last little bit, this was a walk in the park. No big dual carbs to deal with, none of that. So we got to pull the alternator off and swap it to the other engine. We're going to pull this carburetor off because it's brand new, and I was having some issues with the carb on the other engine just because the car had sat for so long. But we're moving right along. Hopefully we'll have the other engine in today. The only thing is we're not sure if we have a muffler that's going to work with the thing, so it might be open header until we figure that out. But not too bad. I think that maybe took 30 minutes. I wish we would have timed it. It actually came out really, really smooth. So hopefully the next one goes in just as smooth. Well, just like every time you go to work on an old car, something goes wrong. And this time it was my fault. I can't really say it was my fault. It just was something I didn't think about, which is generally what happens every time you work on an old car. We were humming right along, had the 1600 single port ready to go in, putting the carb on, and that's where our problem started. I'll show you what we were dealing with. You might see some of it on the time lapse if I don't cut it all out. And maybe some of you guys watching would have known what the problem was before we even started. You see my brother fiddling around with the carburetor. It's still not back on the engine because we just found that when that stud pulled out, it pulled some of the carb out. So we got to try and clean that out and see if we can make it work. Well, we weren't going to reuse this carburetor because it really needed to be rebuilt. We were going to use the brand new carburetor off the 1600 dual port. I wasn't thinking. For some reason, I thought on this single port motor of mine, I was running a 34 pict 3, but this is actually a 3031 pict 3 Solex carb. And the mounting at the base plate is much smaller than the 34. So we can't use that 34 carb. I just did a down and dirty try and clean out job on the carburetor. I don't know that it's going to work, but we want to get this in the car and see if we can get it running. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. We just pulled it apart. We had part of a rebuild kit at least to be able to replace the top gasket, but I pretty much just cleaned everything out that I could, hosed it down, and we're hoping for the best. Fingers crossed. Well, everything is in, everything is hooked up. Somehow we fit the tuck-up exhaust system from the Bug on this. It's right up against the body. I think it's going to make a lot of noise. I know the timing's way off and the carb's not adjusted, but we're going to give it our best shot here to see if this thing will run.
Did you turn those out, 2 and 3?
They're turned.
they're where they should be to.
They're turned. At least turned enough to do something if the timing's close. Yeah, it might be good if we hook the battery back up.
Yeah.
If it immediately catches fire, I'm blaming you.
I think it'll immediately catch fire, maybe eventually.
Maybe eventually. Take two. I'll work the gas.
Okay.
Go for it. Go again. Go again. Go again. Go again. Go again. Alright, so after a little bit of settling, I don't even know if I'm in the camera, but so after a little bit, we actually got it running and sort of idling. We're going to time it really quick. I'll play with the carburetor. We'll kind of go from there. I'll grab me a 10mm. We got the engine in, got it running. We're doing a bunch of tune-up on it when it got too dark for video and my camera actually died. So just a real quick recap. We had swapped in the 1600 single port out of my Pop's 56, which originally came out of my 69 Bug. Awesome daily driver motor. When we did it, we had to retime everything, and if you noticed in the time lapse, I had to sort of rebuild the carb, even though we didn't have a rebuild kit. It was mostly pull it apart, blow it out as best as possible to see if we could get it running good. And it actually is running really, really good right now. I think the carb might still need to be rebuilt at some point. But my brother's actually itching to drive this car, but we've got to get brakes on it first. So that's going to be it for this mileage unknown, just getting the engine in, getting it running. Next video we're doing brakes, and then there will be us driving this bad boy.